Hey, it's Jeremy from jeremy.net. Check out my website to get a look at my, check out my comics and other artwork. This video is a bonus figure drawing purge. Right now, or I've just completed, taking a class with Carl Ganas at the Animation Guild. It's costume and drape figure. And there's one night, it's a 2-night-a-week class, and one night we focus on drapery and fabric and folds. And then the second night we focus on costume. And on the costume night, Carl encourages us to experiment with different mediums. I took that as an opportunity to do a lot more ink drawing, because I do my comic books where I mostly, I finish them in ink with ink and a brush, India ink and brush, and I thought, figure drawing class is a good place to practice brush control. I figured the best way to get better with any medium is to use it as often as possible. So this is one that I probably will post on my blog, and this one I probably won't, because it feels a lot more unfinished in the sense that you can do a drawing that's part pencil and then part ink, but depending on the portions that you have finished, there's a way to do it that it doesn't feel unfinished. Whereas this one definitely feels like I was drawing, didn't get time to finish the head. Plus the fact that it's a bit out of proportion. If you compare the upper part of her body to her lower half, it's not horribly out of proportion, but even though her hips are turning, it feels like it's a little too narrow for this angle. Volumetrically, there could have been a way to make this more convincing. Like if I had really made you feel the sense of her torso ending here and this being just neck and head up there. There's things that are subtly off with the proportions that I could fix. In fact, this would be a good one to go back and redraw. But yeah, probably not gonna use this one for the blog. It's a funny thing. Well, this one all in pencil, and it does feel more complete. However, these joints in the knees really bother me, so I don't think I'm gonna put those in there. Like immediately after drawing that, I went and started doing a little thumbnail to kind of break down what I was doing wrong in this drawing. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but one of our cats is meowing like a freak in the background, and she's not doing it because she's saying anything's wrong. I've checked on her. She just does that because she hears me paying attention to you guys, and she's jealous. Anyway, yeah, probably not gonna put this one on the blog. Some of these I went pretty heavy with the ink, so it's actually sticking together. The pages are sticking together a little bit. Like you can see some traces on the other page. This one is actually an example of what I was talking about, where the leg is unfinished, but even though it's unfinished, it doesn't distract from the overall sense of completion of this drawing. And I think my drawings when I do this costume and drape figure class do tend to be a little bit more out of proportion because I'm not focusing purely on the fundamental physical structure and proportion. I immediately have to move into describing what the clothing and the costume is doing, what the fabric's doing, and how it's describing that underlying form. And sometimes I have to make a choice. I have to decide, do I want to sit there and futz with the proportion and futz with the anatomy, or do I want to start drawing the clothing, because that's the point of the class. I do like this one. I think I'm going to put it in, even though, again, the proportions feel a little bit off to me. I think if I hadn't screwed up this arm, I would probably put this one in. It's not bad, but it's, stuff in it that bothers me. Then and I kind of half-assed right in here the transition from the lower torso from the pelvis into the upper torso. Like I think I did clearly define the pelvis, but the transitional form into the rib cage, what's happening with the clothing, I just sort of black mark scribbled it in instead of really clearly describing it. And that's one of the things that I don't want to say punish myself for, but it's one of the things that I know is my problem, and I always will say, no, that's not good enough when I do that, because I know it's a bad problem. So because of that, I don't think I'll put this one in. Whereas this one, I like a lot. It feels very complete to me. Now here's another thing. In a way, the night when I do the ink drawings feels a little bit like a cheat to me. The reason for that is because by nature, I tend to be a very loose artist, and a lot of my work looks kind of unfinished sometimes. The finished pieces, I always keep asking myself, you know, I guess I ask myself, should I push it further? Because a lot of artists feel like they destroy a piece by overworking it, and they go too far and they work out too long, and at a certain point they've destroyed whatever they had. Whereas I really like the spontaneity of a nice sketch. I like this one. This one's going to go in the blog. And I think that in a way, ink drawings feel like a bit cheap to me, because just the solid black line, if you can make a clear, bold mark, and that mark is an accurate one, and it describes what you're trying to describe, if it communicates volume, form, action, if it does that, it feels much more finished with an ink drawing. So a lot of times I look at these drawings and I'm like, if I did this in pencil, I wouldn't feel like it's as complete or as finished a drawing as this ink one. I do like this drawing, again, even with the whole lower leg on the right-hand side not being complete. But the area up here, the torso is a little bit off. This is a little bit flat and not necessarily communicating the volumes of where the shoulder should be. Like if her shoulder is really over here, then maybe this arm should be in a little bit more. There's volume problems here in the way that the arm connects. And also, there's a little bit of exaggeration here. It might be, you know what, it could be that her arm was dropping straight down and maybe it was puffy in here but resting, because her arm shouldn't be bending at that angle this low. But, you know, that's also a crazy thing. Sometimes you do stuff and you know that physiologically it does not work, anatomically it's incorrect. But if you can sell stuff visually, if it looks right, then it's right. That's kind of a weird, you know, drawing saying, which you spend all this time trying to make correct and good-looking drawings, but sometimes you look at drawings that communicate and are moving and dynamic, and there's fundamental flaws in them. This one's definitely not going in. I mean, shit, I completely failed in the sense I don't even know what the hell is going on with the rest of this. Like, I don't know if there's a bustle in here that I didn't communicate, didn't draw, but whenever I have a drawing that I can't even figure out what's going on, that definitely doesn't go in. So I don't know what was going on there. I would love to have another pass at this with the model in front of me so I could actually figure out a better way to describe what I was trying to do. You know, a lot of these were like 8-minute poses, and it's really hard to get a lot of defining forms, a lot of defining marks down in 8 minutes, unless you're a speed, you know, gesture artist. I mean, there's some artists who are gesture and drawing things very, very fast. I'm a slow, kind of labored artist. I'm not fast. I wish I were faster. Drawing models in real life, in a figure drawing class where it's timed, that does help me speed up. This one I like very much. I think this is probably one of the best drawings I did in the entire, 6 weeks of the class. Because normally I don't even get faces in there. And I mean, I'm sure anyone who's been looking at my figure drawing videos for any length of time has noticed very few of them have faces. And you know, even this, she's missing her left eye. But still, overall, it feels a lot more complete than most of them. Let's see, we've got another one there. And the problem with this one, the reason why it's not going in, it's just a little too choppy. It has a sense of completeness, but this is one where I rushed it, and that sense of completeness, still, the things that it's describing poorly. It's sort of like someone making a complete sentence, but complete sentence made without, I don't know, without adverbs or missing certain parts of speech. You know, like if you just had a sentence that was just of nouns, no verbs, no prepositions, nothing like that, and just basic, apple bird, you know, hood, shoe, you know, it's like, yeah, the things that are in the drawing are there, and you can tell if that's what they are, but they're still poorly described. They're not a complete sentence, and on top of that, the first step is getting a complete sentence. The second step is making an elegant one, and that drawing is neither. Hell, I spent more time talking about than I probably did draw it. Most of these were probably 8-minute poses. In this session, occasionally we would do stuff longer, like 10s and 15s, but it was a lot of 8-minute poses. This one is both too scrappy and I didn't really finish describing the form, but also I don't think I did a good enough job of breaking up what was going on visually. Like there's a lot of verticals in this drawing. And those are the kind of things that changes I would make in a finished illustration that I'm doing, like either for my comics or when I'm working on like a painting or a design for an art print, where I'll sit there and I'll work out vertical lines versus horizontal lines versus white space to kind of create a sense of pattern and composition. But I do pay attention to those things when I'm in figure drawing class. And sometimes I'll look at a drawing and say, oh wait, no, this is too much of the same lines in the same direction, creating sort of there's a whole lot of vertical lines here. And after a while, the whole thing will just blend together. And you kind of want to use horizontals or white space to break up shapes to kind of clearly define one shape from the other. If I was going to do this, because even her legs are verticals, then it would be nice to maybe have this just shaded in, either with pencil tone or with black to separate the legs from the, separate these verticals from the verticals in here and the verticals in there. There wasn't really a good place for horizontals in this. So that's something where it might be verticals and white space. See, this is one interesting that I was talking about that the page before. Now this one is almost all verticals until you get up to the shoulder. Now first off, I do put in horizontals when you get up around the head, defining that shape. But here, notice there's a lot of verticals down here that are close together. This is kind of what I was saying before, the hatching. And then white space. And then it's long verticals, but it's sort of like a long area and there's more white space. Then back to, these are diagonals, but it's back to breaking up the white space, then a little bit more white space, and then breaking it up. So it creates a rhythm instead of just having this whole dress being all just filled with verticals. Because there were probably more wrinkles and folds in there that I chose not to draw simply because I didn't want to have this thing filled with that. It's very possible that I made these decisions in this drawing as a reaction to this drawing. A lot of times when I'm in class and I do one drawing and it doesn't come out well, I try to keep it in mind and say, all right, what are the things I did wrong? How can I make it better in the next one? And I made conscious choices in this one to stick to it. A lot of times in figure drawing classes, a lot of it comes down to concentration because I know what I should be doing, but I get lazy or I'm sloppy, or I'm just enjoying mark making. I mean, as much as we talk about getting better as artists, I really do enjoy the drawing process. Just sitting and making marks on a page, whether pencil, ink, paint, what have you, I find it very soothing, very relaxing. And I have to force myself to pay attention and say, make this better, improve, try and fix this. Because otherwise, I'll just sit there and just all day long just doodle, 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 and just be happy with it. I don't think I'll put this one in. Again, a little bit muddy in this area in terms of like the verticals versus horizontals. The white space in here is decent, but also I don't think I really defined the volume of the upper torso properly. It's a little bit, it feels flat like a cartoon cell. I didn't really define a front plane of her body versus a side plane. It all just kind of feels like one, and there probably should have been lines in there somewhere to indicate lines or tone somehow, whether with ink or with going back in with the pencil and creating a little bit of tone, but I didn't do that. And then also the cape coming down off of there, definitely jumbled in here. This is a bad version of what I'm talking about. This is where you have a whole bunch of lines in one area creating too much of the same. Now, if this was just one broad area that wasn't divided into segments, it would actually make sense and it might really improve it to do it all with this kind of hatching. But you can see here that it kind of had the feeling of there's a fold going in here from where her arm is, just it being bulged, raising over her arm, then her shoulder going in that way. The hood behind resting on top of it. Like there's kind of like 1, 2, 3 sections in here, 4 if you count the hood, and then the 5 underneath inside of it. And I didn't really break those apart. So that's a fail, which is weird that I saw it on one drawing, did it poorly. Saw it in another drawing, identified and got better. Then another drawing, poor again. That's how it goes sometimes. All you can do is just try and pay attention to these things and keep working. These are just some notes that I make to myself in terms of gestures and dominant shapes. Here's another one. that I think I will put in the blog. Pretty happy with it. And even the fact that I made an intentional choice of she's having a parasol and I decided to put just the lines on one side and then not on the other. I think if I had put them on the other side, I may have only put a few in down there, but I just decided to try and see what happens if I made a decision about these things. Because sometimes you're doing figure drawing, it's catch as catch can, and you're just chasing stuff. And the hope is that eventually you get skilled enough at it that every line you put down is a choice. It may be a choice that's made instantaneously, but that you're driving a ship as opposed to chasing a rabbit. That's the hope. Although, I will say this is very poor right here. That this is just too much of a direct pipe instead of full going up. And in theory, it looks like these lines should be converging, like this leg that's stepping forward and over. I think what she did was she had her hips so that they were kind of even and balanced, but this leg was probably pushing back a little bit more and coming down this way, and then was crossing over. Ordinarily, I would feel like this would have something where the hip of the leg coming forward would be down a little bit. Or, I mean, this hip would be... Let's see, that's the challenge. Would it be up or would it be down? I would normally move one of the hips up or down. But in this one, I think her position was that it was balanced, but this was the back leg and this was the front leg. Point being is that this fold doesn't communicate because it feels like it should be converging as it goes up to that hip. But yeah, I'm still putting it in because I like the drawing. Yeah, this one feels just kind of like a garbly bit of a mess. Not going in. This one is interesting. Because I feel like I want to put it in because I got the whole figure in, which I usually do. And this was a good thing for me to draw because it was a complicated dress with a lot of folds and layers, and each one of these areas is sort of like a different tier in which there was a lot of wrinkle and ruffle in the fabric going all the way down to the floor. And it's tough to, when you've got that much detail and you're trying to make decisions about how to describe it all. This one felt like it wasn't a failure, but it wasn't 100% success either. It was just me trying to draw something challenging, and that's what I got out of it. I don't know. If you see it in the blog, then you'll know that I folded. And this one feels very incomplete. This feels like one where the model was taking a pose that was simple but challenging with the foreshortening, and I spent all of my time, the fact that you can see all these pencil marks in here, I spent all of my time trying to work out the proportion and the pose, and then by the time I got around to the ink, it was almost over. Now this is something new. This was a little shift. I recently bought some aqua brushes and filled them with India ink, not India ink, with fountain pen ink. And I've got one that's 100% fountain pen ink. I have one that's 50% fountain pen ink, 50% water, so it's an ink wash. And then I have one that's like a few drops of ink along with water. So it's a very light wash. And this was something I was experimenting with for figure drawing, not figure drawing. I went on an animal drawing trip with some friends, and we were talking about different brush pens. We're drawing animals at the zoo, and I wasn't happy with some of the brush pens that I had with me, and I've always been experimenting with a few. And so far, the Pentel Aqua Brush pens, which, hang on. Oh. These guys. You know, hopefully Pentel will give me a kickback or send me a box of free ones. Point is I bought a set of these, plus I had another one that I already had that I filled with white. Some white fountain pen ink, or it wasn't fountain pen ink, but it was Doc Martens white drawing ink to kind of use as a white tone. And I was doing a lot of tonal studies with these ink washes to try and really think in a more volumetric light and tone thing. I was doing drawings on tone paper, which maybe I'll show you a few of those sometime. But not right now. Right now, this is me drawing with the 100% ink and the very light wash. And the only thing I didn't like is that the fountain pen ink seems to run a little bit. This ain't a bad drawing, but there isn't that much about it that I felt was unique or interesting or worth putting in. And this is what I usually talk about when I talk about redrawing my problem drawings that aren't working. This was the drawing that the pose the model took. While the model was on a break, I was sitting there and trying to figure out what I was doing wrong with the pelvis, what I was doing wrong with the torso. Just simple boxes and cylinders, just working out the details. So no, this drawing isn't going in, but these are very important. I make diagrams like this all the time to try and figure out what I'm doing wrong and to make my drawings better. This one I'm very happy with. I think that I made a choice, like this one was bleeding a lot, like a stuck pig. And then I think I switched to, I think maybe I had a Pentel fountain pen with me also. So I switched from the, not fountain pen, brush pen. So I think I switched from the aqua brush I was using to just a wash, and then the brush pen for this because it didn't bleed as much. So I'm pretty happy with this one. Oddly enough, this one feels very unfinished, but I like it. And I just recently read the first issue of Terry Moore's new Strangers in Paradise series, and I was kind of imagining the character Kachu, kind of having it. This character had a devil. She was doing a kind of a come hither thing with her fingers, I think. I liked it, and I like this this drawing as unfinished as it feels. You know what? She wasn't doing come hither. She was doing come hither in this pose. And this one I like, except for the fact that I really butchered the face there and how much it's bleeding here again. I think I was going back and forth between the wash, the fountain pen, wash, and the fountain pen. And then I tried doing one in just the wash. And I think that eventually that's where I wound up. Let's see. Another drawing. This one isn't going into the blog, but this was me just trying to look at what I was trying to express in the face, because I think I did a pretty poor job of communicating everything that was going on in there. This was one of those where it started out good, and then I kind of wrecked it. The underdrawing was decent. And this was me doing just ink with no underdrawing. And then, this is me again doing another diagram to try and understand what was flawed about it. Like, you know, I'm an underdrawing guy. I have a hard time doing drawings where I just go with ink and block out the whole thing. I really like having a sketchy, loose understructure where I can work out the proportion beforehand. For me, that's the problem with this, really, is proportion. The arms feel out of proportion. You know, wrong length, not the right thickness. The thighs don't feel like they have any volume. And this is the kind of stuff that I work out in those rough undersketches. This one I do like. And oddly enough, this one was done completely with fountain pen ink, not with an underdrawing. So this might be, like I said before, a response to doing one drawing and it not coming out well, and then trying it again. You know, for as much bitching and moaning as I was doing a second ago, maybe that's something I need to do in the future, is just challenge myself to do more drawings like this. Because, again, figure drawing I used to be horrible at, which was why because I never really did it and studied at it, didn't practice. And now I still have a lot to learn, but I've developed some facility for drawing the human form just by going to class all the time and working on it. And for as much as I work in ink, maybe I should be spending more time just doing ink drawings completely without the underdrawing and just working on making choices and just saying, all right, this is the line. I can't remove it. I have to work with it and try to make it look as good as possible. This one, yeah, all that foreshortening did not pull that off. That's horrible. Did not work at all. Not going in. Let's see. I think this was the start of a different night. I don't know if it was the same night or not. But I think I had one particular night, and this was the night where I was going back and forth a lot between wash, ink only, ink on wash with it bleeding, and just trying to find a nice balance. Yeah, because this is all still part of the same night. I remember now the poses the model was taking. Yeah, this one also all ink, and yeah, it's cute, kind of silly. She's doing like an Alice in Wonderland costume. I think I'll put that one in. And I don't think that I'm going to use brushes anymore when I'm in this class doing the costume drawings. I think I'm going to use the brush pens, because when I'm using brushes, I have to have my bottle of ink. It's an open bottle. I'm always worried about spilling it. There's, what else is there? You know, I've got to have a cup to rinse it in. I'm always worried about the brush. Well, not worried about the brushes fraying, because I kind of use brushes that are old and beat up that I know I can treat crappier than usual. But the time that I spend doing the underdrawing with those drawings, when I'm doing brush work and then going to the brush, just the time of switching back and forth between the two and cleaning off the brush a little bit, so it's not gonna, you know, the bristles won't splay out. That extra time takes time away from the drawing. And I found that with the brush pens, if I really want to, I've got maybe 2 or 3 brush pens I'm using, and just take the cap off of one off and put the cap on the other and go at it, just switch, or just picking one particular one and sticking with it. I like this drawing. I think I'm going to keep it in the blog, as it were. This one I do not like. This was another case of it the marker bleeding again and me not being happy with it, or the brush pen bleeding. Lot of bleeding here as well, and this was me at a certain point. The brush pen that I was using that has the 100% fountain pen ink, sometimes I will take it off and I'll lay the brush down and it will lay down like a large fat stroke, like I dipped it in paint instead of ink and was brushing on a puddle of ink. So I think I ended up, this one, you know, pretty happy with. That'll go in. But, oh, I was saying, eventually I ended up, and I don't know if it's the next drawing or the drawing after that. No, it's not this drawing yet. But at a certain point, I started doing drawing with just the wash. These are left-handed drawings. Sometimes, just to shake us up, Carl will tell us to draw with our non-dominant hand. And so this one's a left-hander. I mean, none of these are going to go in the blog because they're wretched. But I'll show you guys because, you know, you're here. We're buddies, you know. Nothing wrong between friends. Yeah, so these are almost like just weird, cartoony, distorted drawings. I kind of just went with the fact that I wasn't drawing with my dominant hand, so why not do weird, crazy stuff with it? And then just, you know. So probably the most childlike drawings I've done in years. They're just me being loose and all over the place and not worrying about proportion, not worried about anything, just drawing weird shit. Oh yeah, and that's what I think what happens. When I finished this drawing, the model took a break, and I was doing these little doodles here with just the wash pen. And I think I used the one that's a 50-50 wash. And I liked the way that looked. I thought, yeah, it looks almost like it's got the value of a pencil sketch with the crispness of an ink drawing. And then the next pose the model did was this one. I was happy with how that one came out. This one, which I was also really happy with. Let's see. So another one. I think all of these that are with the wash are probably some of the best ones I did the entire class. Which I also find when I do this class, that every time I get to like the end, by the last night or the last week, I'm like, if I could have drawn this well the whole time, I would have like a whole book full of much better drawings. I always feel like I always wish I started the class with the skill set that I feel, or the sharpening that I feel like I've had at the end of it. And that's always how it is in life. I was pretty happy with this one. That one's going in. And this one, yeah, this 50% wash with just the wash alone, I was really happy with. Because when I make construction lines, they may stick out to a certain point, but they don't overwhelm the piece. They don't dominate it the way that sometimes when you're drawing in ink it does. Like I may put a construction line across a form in a manner that would be very, very distracting in fully black ink, but not so much when it's in a wash. You know, like these construction lines here. I mean, these are almost like not even construction, they're like measurement lines for me, helping to try and figure out how wide I want the torso to be and be like, no, that's too wide, bring it in a little bit, you know. So that's where a lot of these lines are, like this line that's crossing across the boots here. You know, if that were done in ink, if it was a very thin line, I could get away with it. Like, I know these are ink, they're ink washes, but if I had drawn it with 100% ink as opposed to a wash, this line that's curving along here, me trying to figure out the shape of the pelvis and then the other leg coming out of it. If this had been done in 100% ink, I could have gotten away with it cutting across if it was a very thin line. But if it was anything like the lines that are in here, anything thicker than this line there, it would have just killed it. It would have been like, oh. And I don't, that's one of those things where you draw a line across the form and it's distracting because it destroys everything that should be visually in front of it. It breaks the illusion of depth. And yeah, that's it. So those are the ink drawings I did over the this class at the Animation Guild. So I'm gonna put this sketchbook away, other than maybe some field sketching until next year.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoy these videos, please like and share them. Don't forget to click the subscribe button. You can sign up for my weekly newsletter to get a free digital comic at newsletter.jeremy.net. That's newsletter.germi.net. Also, visit my main website, jeremy.net, where you can buy my comic books, art prints, and more. There's also links to my Instagram, Twitter, and other social media accounts. That's it for now. Go be creative.